Hello and welcome to another Diecast rescue. In this case it's going to be a Dinky Humber police car, number 256. I believe this is the earlier Dinky 165 Humber saloon car, only now with an interior and a police paint job. So as you can see, the car's a little bit play worn, it's got a bit of chipping and it's missing some tyres. Well, actually it's missing a tyre. And one of the tyres doesn't match the other two. This seems to be a bit of a thing. I think people used to swap their tyres around on their cars. So anyway, we've got replacements for that, so that's not a problem. As you can see, there is a little bit of roof damage. The glass looks to be, the transparency appears to be broken, and the policemen that I always thought were like slightly too small for the car. They always look like teenagers been joyriding it or something. But anyway, we shall have to get into it and see what we can sort it out. Okay, so what we'll do is, using our shallow drill bit, we shall just shave the heads off the rivets. There's only two, one at the front and one at the rear. It doesn't take much to actually get this car apart, to be honest. Okay, so now we've got the base plate off. You can see it's a little tarnished, but otherwise it's in pretty good condition. And you can see how that suspension works, that big sort of spring. Now the interior is the usual sort of injection mould, not injection moulded, it's vacuum formed, and it's very fragile, and as you can see it's a bit broke. Because frankly a bit of sunlight and time, frankly, is not kind to these things. And sometimes it might look like they're dirty, but actually the plastic's gotten stained. So although we're going to try cleaning this up, it may well be we'll end up with some staining remaining on it. Obviously those policemen have been eating years worth of burgers and stuff in the car, and it's gotten a bit messy. But we should be able to sort that out. Now for cars of this period, their castings are quite solid. You can still see the police sign has moved around a little bit. That's because the police sign and the clear parts are actually all riveted together in one go. And so obviously if it comes a bit loose, they can both suffer a little bit. Now you can see underneath the windscreen split from front to rear through the rivet. But I think that's from probably the car getting a knock on its roof. As I say, there's a bit of a ding in the roof. And so I've drilled out the rivet a little bit. I'm going to try and pop that glass out, but I'm not too confident to be able to salvage this because, as I say, it's quite a bad crack. Okay, so got the plastic out now. As you can see, it's very badly split. So I mean, I could have a go at gluing that, but I know it just won't work. It'll go cloudy if you try and glue it, no matter what you do. So we'll have to order a spare for that. We'll come back to that when it arrives. As you can see, the police sign and the transparency use the same rivet to keep them together. So what we'll probably do with that is actually just super glue it back on. It's the easiest thing to do. There you go, police. And you can see the casting's got a bit of a dent in the roof. And you might be able to see the A-pillars are damaged as well, so we might have to do some straightening out on that. Okay, so everyone's favourite bit of any restoration video is playing with dangerous chemicals. So we're going to use a bit of paint stripper to strip this paint off. And we'll see how well it comes off. I suspect it might not be too bad, but some of these older paints, they are actually quite resistant to the paint stripper, which is quite interesting. Probably all the lead or whatever it is that they used to use then, asbestos or something, I don't know. But you know what I'm saying, it's like modern paints are like much easier to strip off than the older ones. And sure enough, this actually took 2 goes with the paint stripper to get all the paint off. As I say, in the past it was quite tough stuff. Anyway, so now we have our shell all removed, loosened off with its paint, and we'll go through to the next step. Okay, so as you can see, the roof's got a bit of a ding in it, and so what my plan is to do is use a bit of heat from the heat gun to warm this up and hopefully flex it straight. I'm not sure how well that's going to work, but we'll see it. Also, you can see how the A pillar, I don't know how well this will show up in shot, but can you see how it's like it's buckled? I'll try and straighten that. And also, the one handy thing about using the heat gun is it actually takes the stress out of the metal. So what I've been doing here is I've heated the car up quite hot with the heat gun. I'm just using this chisel to try and flatten the leading edge of the roof to take that ding out of it. I'm not going to be able to remove the ding completely, but I'll be able to straighten the roof line. So just putting gentle pressure. I'm not hammering it or anything, I'm just kind of leaning on it slightly. And it will take the thing out of it. As I say, this little dent, I'm going to try and fill it, but I'm not sure how well that's going to work, but it'll be better than it was. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm using heat on the door pillars, and I'm just using a pair of pliers to try and straighten them. There you go, it's not too bad. And it hasn't broken. But someone's disappointed I haven't shot it off into space. So I've got to straighten it in the other direction as well. You can also see the other door pillar actually had a crack in it that the paint was hiding. Okay, so here I'm just using some super glue to run into the back of the crack in the door pillar to strengthen it. That should hold well. I haven't got really any means of welding this. I mean, that's something for the future I'll have a crack at doing. But in the short term, I'm just going to use super glue, run into the, like by capillary action, into the crack, and that should do the job. Okay, so here I'm moving on to giving the body shell a buff up, because obviously it's got tarnish and minor damage on the surface, so we're just going to run that off with a wire wheel and give it a rub down. I don't want to make this too super smooth though, because these vehicles always had a texture to them anyway, and I kind of don't want to lose that. So I'm just removing all the horrible dirt and stuff. Okay, so I'm just using some modelling filler to just fill in the cracks and the dent on the roof line. I mean, I think the dent on the roof line is going to be visible, but it'll be like minimised, if you see what I mean. It's not going to look as bad as it was, because there's like a little crease along the top of the roof as well we're going to fill in. And I'm just using this modelling filler to do so, which dries in a few minutes. It's a bit like toothpaste. It does say in the instructions not to get it on your skin, but hasn't done me any harm so far, he says. But your fingers are such a useful tool. As you can see, I'm just filling in that as best I can. Just using my finger and rubbing it off, if you see what I mean. We'll give this a sand down as well, but the general shaping is going to be done by finger. So you can sort of see how it's filled in there's like a sort of weird lip on the edge of the metal. Okay, I'm just using a sanding block to smooth out the roof. And we're just using a file as well on the door pillars to just sort of make them look a bit more straight. Okay, so at this point I've used super glue to put the police box back on the roof, and I've masked up the wheels on the base plate ready for painting. So it's a fairly simple paint job this, it's going to be black on black basically. Because police cars in the 50s and 60s weren't particularly, or the early 60s weren't particularly high visibility. In the UK, of course, that is. Okay, so we just sprayed the base plate of the car satin black, just to give it a differentiation from the top half of the car, which should be gloss black. I'm just pulling the masking tape off, so you can sort of see the wheels are still nice and shiny. It's quite solidly made, which is one of the appeals of cars of this period, was that there was an unnecessary amount of metal in them, I suppose, compared to later vehicles, which give them that nice chunky heavy feel. Okay, so just giving the wheels a quick buff up with the wire wheel, just to get a little bit of gungeon corrosion on, so just giving them a quick go with that helps. Okay, so we're just giving our dirty policeman an interior a wash, see if we can clean them up a little bit. It's a bit of soapy water. Now this vacuum formed plastic can get quite dirty, and also it can get embedded as well with stuff. Like it's not, as you can see, like even though this has been scrubbed quite a bit, there's some muck coming out of the plastic which I think stained it. Obviously I don't know what this car's history has been, where it's been, what's happened to it. Okay, so we've got a nice new tyres we're going to put on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the tyres in hot water so that it'll go on much easier. And sometimes even when you have put them in quite hot water, they can still be a little bit stubborn to get on. And sometimes you'll trap the rubber glove between the wheel and the tyre, which is very annoying, or hilarious depending on your point of view. I'm just fishing them out the water with the paintbrush handle because the water is very hot. Okay, so here's our original cracked screen, which you can see I've had to go gluing to see if it could be recovered, which obviously it didn't. And here is our newly purchased via the internet replacement windscreen, which is a bit of an improvement. Okay, so we'll dip our new windscreen in a bit of floor polish to give it a bit of a sparkle and leave that to dry. And underneath another plastic container to keep the dust off of it, of course. Okay, so we've painted the car's body shell gloss black, but somehow I've lost the footage of that happening, so I just have to take my word that I actually did spray it. Anyway, so as you can see, we're going straight through to detailing now, and we're using Vallejo aluminium again, because that's quite a nice scale colour for the chrome work. Okay, so apart from the silver, I used some red paint for the rear lights. Now I've seen some cars have got just the lower light painted red, and some cars have both sets of lights on the rear painted red. So I'm not quite sure which is correct, so I've just opted for the single colour, and then if it turns out to be wrong I can always add more red paint later. Okay, so we just put our new glazing unit into the shell of the car, click it, and we're going to click it into position. And then for a good measure we'll put a little bit of silicone on it as well to hold it in place. Now the silicone I'm using is just that clear stuff that you can use to, you know, stop leaks around the bathroom or the toilet or whatever. It's just domestic silicone out of a cartridge, and so I can keep going back to it and get a little bit more goo out of it. So it's just dabbing a little bit around that centre post, and I'll just tidy it up with some cocktail sticks properly, but you can get the idea of what I'm doing there. And because it doesn't set like araldite, if it ever has to be gotten off again in the future, it can just be pressed apart. Now I'm just using some PVA glue, in this case out of a craft bottle, but other PVA brands are available. But all I'm doing here is the vacuum formed interior is actually originally in the car would have been glued to the glazing unit. And obviously that's quite strong stuff they're using, because I think a lot of the glazing units got broke trying to remove it from the car. See what I mean? Or if the glazing got broke, it then damaged the interior. So in this case I'm just going to use some PVA, because the handy thing about PVA is it'll dry clear, and also again because it's non-porous surfaces sticking together, they will come apart if you pull at them gently. They'll peel apart, but it's sufficiently tacky to hold it in place, if that makes sense. I'm using a odd little dot of PVA to hold the cracks in the vacuum form together as well. It's not ideal, but I mean, as I say, it will dry clear and you won't see it. Okay, so we're just putting the base plate on the car, and we'll screw it on using our self-tapping screws. Now I still think they're very tiny policemen, they can barely see over the steering wheel, but that's what they were made with. Now I've got some third-party water slide transfers to do the police sign and the number plates. So that's the rear one. Try and focus. Focus. There you go. PC49. And the front one. There you go. So what we'll do is we'll just drop these into water one at a time. So I'm going to cut this police sign in half so I can do each one individually. Again, I'll be using microset to actually glue the, well, not glue them on, but you put that onto the surface that you're putting the water slide transfers onto with a brush. So what we'll do is we'll put one of these transfers in the water, and you'll see that it actually becomes soft and ready to go in seconds. I'm just checking here that it looks like it'll fit on the sign, because that does happen, you get transfers that just don't fit. So it's better to figure that out now rather than it's wet, because that's just too late. So put it in the water. You'll see me fish it out very quickly, and I'll just test that it can slide. There you go, so it moves. So we're now going to put it onto the police box, and you see I'll get a little bit of microset and carefully transfer it on, and so I'll use the brush to squeegee the excess water out and to move the transfer. I've always found like fingers are actually one of the best ways of doing this, and then basically we're going to repeat this process for the other 3 transfers. So we got the other police sign, we put that in the water, and again you'll see how quickly this comes off. Look at that. Ready to go. It's that quick. Whereas some of the older transfers you used to get with the model kits, you'd have to have them in the water for a couple of minutes. But these things are like just seconds. So whilst the backing is wet, you've got a reasonable amount of time to move them around and get them all straightened up, but don't try and lift them off again once they're on. Okay, so now we're doing the back number plate, which in this case proved a bit annoying and stuck to my finger. So as you can see there, I'm just trying to straighten it up and smooth out any air bubbles that might be in it, because that's a slightly larger transfer. Okay, then we'll do the last one. Put that in, get it ready to go. Now here I was trying to find a way of being able to film the front of the car, having the transfer put onto it, hence my sort of building it up on various things. Curses. I got it on, but eventually then it stuck to my finger and I had to do it off camera. Oh well. Right, so let's see what that looks like on the turntable. Very quick tidy up. Okay, and here we have the finished car. So we have our black paint job. We've replaced the glass. We've painted our chrome work up, and we've applied new transfers. And we've given the policemen a bit of a bath, because I think they needed it. And we've replaced the tyres. So we've got like a fairly new sparkly car, but I haven't over sanded it because I quite liked the sort of, you know, that sort of texture that some of these older castings have. So anyway, if you liked what you've seen, please subscribe, leave us a like, by all means comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.